The mic drop. Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the Big Mic Drop. This is Tuesday, February 16th. I hope everybody had a lovely Valentine's Day. We have a lot to talk about tonight. I wanted to come with this special Fire Your History Teacher broadcast tonight because I'm starting to see something that's very insidious, and I think it's time that we bring it to the forefront. Let's talk about it. It's a sensitive subject, so I'm going to warn you, if you're homosensitive and, you can't really stand to hear people talk about, the sexuality conversations or the hard conversations, then, I get it. So just try to keep the comments on a respectable level. I'm going to keep my commentary at a respectable level. This is by no means aim or a stab at anybody's lifestyle choices or whatnot. I don't have anything to do with that. What I do have something to do with, however, is the narrative and the narrative that's being taught to our children in schools. That's why I started Fire Your History Teacher. So I started Fire Your History Teacher for that specific reason, because a lot of us don't really pay attention to what our children are learning in school. They don't send books home in a lot of public schools. And it's kind of hard for us to keep a tab on what our children are actually being fed and what they're ingesting. Now, those of you who are familiar with this last recent administration, the Trump administration, then you do understand that they were actually trying to push what they called the 1776 education agenda, which was a direct contrast or the antithesis to the 1619 project. So what you're finding happening in schools is that they're not going to be teaching civil rights. They're not going to be teaching slavery. They're not going to be teaching anything that has any implications on social issues to your children, which is why our children seem a little less conscious. That's part of the reason this whole COVID-19 thing has thrown everything into a tailspin, is because you can't really control the minds of the kids within the four walls of the school. And that's where the indoctrination takes place. And I'm going to talk from personal experience. I got some notes tonight, and I'm going to talk about, like I said, my experience and versus what I really do know. So before we get started, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and share this video, and also subscribe if you're not already subscribed. If you're on Facebook, check us out on YouTube. We need some more subscribers. So the Big Mic Drop YouTube channel, we're trying to get it popping on YouTube. So, hit us up, subscribe, like, share. That's the only way we're going to be able to get this message out here. I've been reaching out to some members of the Black grassroots media movement. And, I'm trying to link up with some bigger name people, some people that have some bigger platforms, so we can start pushing what we have to say out here. So any issues, any things that, any issues, complaints, or things that you want me to bring to the bigger fish in this game, just let me know, because we're actually going to build our agenda from the ground up. So let me take a sip of coffee. Of course, let's get started with some events, just some things, and kind of get into it a little bit here. Hit the thumbs up button, like and subscribe, share. So, of course, everybody knows that Donald Trump was acquitted for a second time, and in this impeachment farce of a trial. At this point in time, I'm starting to share the same talking points as, the Republicans on this. Like, let's just move on with it. Let's get along with it. Right now, Nancy Pelosi's talking about forming a 9/11 style commission to deal with the Capitol insurrection. And it's like, look, man, stop having failure after failure after failure after failure. You're not going to fail forward, and we're not going to fail forward with you as a people. So, leave the shit alone. Be honest. Excuse my French. Just leave it alone, and let's get on to doing things that need to be done right now. They've pushed off the stimulus for this damn trial, saying now it's going to be the end of the month before they can get, any kind of stimulus to people. I believe it's a bigger mess than what they're leading on. Of course, they're not going to let everybody know the information. They're going to filter the information a certain type of way. But I believe it's a bigger mess up there in D.C. than they're letting us know. And it's not just to do with the coronavirus and the vaccine and trying to roll out that. There's some other things in play right now. Y'all just keep your eyes open. It's coming. And for you people that are Trump supporters, and you kind of thumbing your nose at the system right now, I'm going to do a show called What You Think Is Going to Happen versus What's Really Going to Happen. You don't understand what you're doing. You don't understand what you're condoning. But it is written that people will beg for their own enslavement. But y'all going to be by yourselves on that one, because we finna sky up out of here. We getting ready to sky right up out of here. So I put a comment on Facebook the other day. I had to actually X a couple of people X me. They blocked me as if I'm gonna come looking for their ass. I'm not. But I put up a comment the other day, and the reactions I got and the responses I got were pretty interesting. So I wrote that unity has zero benefits besides Black unity. I see it. I hope you see it too. And motherfuckers hit the roof. Excuse my French. They hit the roof. Like, I had a dude I went to high school with. He called me satanic. But, he hadn't spoke out. I haven't seen him speak out on anything with all these people getting killed. He ain't said nothing about Kyle Rittenhouse. He ain't said nothing about, these killer cops out here. And then he called me satanic. For somebody whose moral compass is that upside down, I take that as a compliment. Because if you like me, that means I'm doing something wrong. And that's just the truth of the matter. Had one woman get on there, she starts going on, I'm a white woman with Black kids and Black unity. You sound like you want segregation. I mean, people just literally took this as a front to being white, because I called for Black unity. So that lets you know that that's a threat to people. That right there gets people's bloods boiling. You know what I mean? What's up, Heather? She read some of the comments. She was on there. I mean, it got totally crazy, man. But like I said, if you like me, then that means I'm doing something wrong. Because if I'm out here unified with some of these people that definitely don't have our best interests at heart or in mind, then, I'm doing something wrong. So instead of getting disrespectful with the folks, man, just let them exit gracefully. I'm turning over a new leaf in life right now. I'm gonna stop going off on folks. You know what I'm saying? I got things I got to worry about that's not dealing with what people think, especially when they're so far outside the box and in left field. Nobody, or totally inside the box, I should say. I can actually deal better with outside the box thinkers than I can with inside the box thinkers. So that should let you know something right there. So I had a homeboy make mention of the whole Meek Mill and Tekashi 6ix9ine run up here in Atlanta. And people are making the comments, they're saying Meek Mill got punked and whatnot. I actually saw it. And I'm sure that Meek did what was best for him in that situation, because I'm sure the conditions of his release, parole, probation, whatever he got going, don't involve fighting the police. And if you fight 6ix9ine, that's who you fighting, is the police. So that's my take on that. Just a little light something to go along. I also have another story tonight I want to share. I mean, it's kind of weird. I don't know if I should share it before I get into my main course here, or should I share it afterward? I think sharing it afterward would drive the point home a little bit more. So I'm gonna share it a little bit afterward. But right now, I'm going to take a little quick commercial break. No, you're like, he got commercials now, right? Now it's just it's a little quick 1 minute commercial break. I'm going to get my notes together and I'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Had to take that moment just to get adjusted real quick. I hope y'all got adjusted as well. Get you something to drink, man. Sit back and I want to hear your thoughts on this. I didn't have anybody on tonight, and I did that on purpose. And I hope y'all have enjoyed the guests that we've had. We've had some pretty good guests on here, man. Some really good guests. Even Tom, Gary Green. I hope y'all enjoyed Huggy Bear, my cousin Coach D last week. She really brought the fire, brought the thunder, and plus the regulars that's always on here. You know what I'm saying? So we've had some pretty exciting guests, but it's about time I get back to, getting this message out here a little bit with just what I think. So I got to come with that every now and then. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's the camera, the screen. Y'all would let me know if my lips was ashy, right? My lips ashy. I need chap on my lip. Big Cliff in the house. Cliff Jones, Mary Jane Doe. Love Coach D. I love her too, man. She's dope. Actually, I'm gonna be honest. Coach D coming back on probably around my birthday because the book actually drops at the end of this month, on the 28th of this month. So the book drops. She's gonna have books in hand. We're gonna have journals. So we're gonna get her back on, man, because I mean her story is really motivational. So I'll start it like this. I went to the dentist yesterday. And when I got there, just like any other dentist, this is a new dentist. So whenever you go to a new dentist, you can have x-rays from the last dentist, but guess what? The new dentist is still going to take x-rays. They're still going to do an examination because they're not going to go off of the other work that people have done. So as the dentist is looking at my teeth, I had a little brown spot on a tooth in the back. And she showed me that. I didn't even know. It's like, well, you can't get to the back and brush and whatnot. So she's like, you just got a little ridge on the back of your tooth and it's a little brown spot. We're going to take a closer look at it. Okay. Did the further examination and realized that it was the beginnings of a cavity. So I'm like, okay, I'll make the appointment. I'll come in. I'll get the cavity taken care of. She's like, well, it's small. It's not going to be long. So anyway, she gets in there, and I like to stay awake at the dentist. I'm kind of weird like that. I like to stay awake and see what's going on, unless it's some kind of oral surgery situation. So she got to going, and she was going probably about 5-10 minutes. She kept going a little longer, went and got another bit, got this, got that. At the end of the day, she's like, wow, it was way bigger than I thought it was. It was just a little spot on the outside of the tooth. But when she started getting in there, that cavity was deep. It was festering. And that's kind of why you have to x-ray things. That's why you have to not take people's word for things. And that's the whole basis of Fire Your History Teacher, or what I like to call FIGHT, FYHT. That's the basis of that. It's not taking anybody's word for anything without double checking it or making sure people have receipts. I'm going to give you an example of this tonight because this is actually going on. And I don't know which schools is going on in. This particular publication I'm going to read from is from a Chicago-based group. But these things are trying to actually sneak their way into the curriculum. And they're pulling some people post-mortem into this movement, and I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's right. And we're going to talk about that. So I'm sure everybody recognizes this gentleman. That's the great Dr. George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver had created over 300 uses for different plants, not just the peanut. He came with uses for the soybean. He came with uses for the sweet potato. They figured out how to dehydrate vegetables. He invented peanut oil, therapeutic peanut oil. I mean, it's just hundreds and hundreds of inventions that George Washington Carver came up with. Now, the interesting thing is he only held the patent to 3. He didn't pass a lot of the information along to mainstream America. As a matter of fact, his work has only been passed down twice since his death. So we're going to talk about his work. We're going to talk about his life. And you hear a lot about that. I majored in history in college and at Troy University. And I remember in a history class, having a discussion American history. And somehow the sexuality of different historical figures came up. And someone stated that George Washington Carver was considered a gay American, a gay male. I really paid it no mind. This was before I woke up a long time. I was still in my late 20s, So I wasn't really on the type of level of thinking that I'm on now. It really didn't resonate with me. It was a lot of things going on back in those days. And I'm going to put you in the time frame. We're probably talking about 2006, 2007. So it was a lot of changes going on. We weren't in the midst of a social media revolution. So a lot of these movements were just basically afterthoughts in people's minds. It wasn't a lot of being able to be flooded with images and propaganda all day. So, I think I, talked about that and then, went to, get drunk or something with some friends. I don't know, whatnot. But George Washington Carver, Troy, Alabama is not that far, or where I was in Alabama is not that far from Tuskegee. So all of that's a pretty close-knit little area. Everybody has their legends and everybody has the people that they know. So just so happened to know somebody who knew somebody who actually personally knew George Washington Carver. And they actually knew intimate details of his health and his life. So upon further research, it was brought to my attention that George Washington Carver was castrated as a child. The Carvers were white people. He was born in 1864, right before slavery was ended. Well, the Emancipation Proclamation was 1863. 1864, George Washington Carver was born in Diamond Grove, Missouri. He was born into slavery. Now, if you look at the History Channel, history.com, and the story about George Washington Carver, they'll specifically tell you that Mr. Carver, which was his slave master, didn't agree with slavery, but yet he had slaves. George Washington Carver was kidnapped. He was kidnapped by slave raiders, him and his mother. And I think he said his brother also, I read some letters of his, and it said his brothers were also kidnapped. His brother, and I think he had 2 brothers or a sister or something like that. But they were kidnapped by the slave raiders and taken to Arkansas. He was just an infant. Mr. Carver sent a prize racehorse worth about $300 and traded that racehorse for George as an infant. He had whooping cough really bad. He was really a sickly child. So he wasn't able to work in the fields. And I think that's what the History Channel said. It's like he didn't agree with slavery, but he needed help working his 240-acre farm. Go figure. They're gonna definitely do what they got to do to whitewash the slave master and the person that was probably more than likely responsible for cutting off George Washington Carver's manhood at a very, very young age. The reason this was done was because the Carvers had a daughter, and being that George had to work in the house and they were going to raise him as their own, it's said that he was castrated at that time before he went into puberty, so he would not deflower their daughter. Letters state a little something different. Looking at George Washington Carver's letters that I looked at earlier today, I looked at probably about 40, 50 years worth of letters that he sent back and forth with people. So according to the letters, he had a great deal of admiration for these people. So it's not really known if they were the ones who did it. There's no documentation of castrating him, but it is known and documented and rumored, and it's been rumored for over 100 years that George Washington Carver was a eunuch. So, I get it. Start digging a little deeper. Let's start looking at what people said about George Washington Carver. How did people arrive at this conclusion about George Washington Carver? So, if you go to YouTube and you look up George Washington Carver, I'm quite sure you'll find something about his sexuality. George Washington Carver, according to the Legacy Project Education Initiative, is celebrated as a gay American inventor. And these are some of the notes that I got from these different publications. A lot of these people that are with these committees and with these different organizations and initiatives are in education. They're doctors of education. They write books. So it's particularly disturbing to me because let me just read this to you. This is from the Legacy Project Education Initiative, and it has the little rainbow things and everything else. So it's totally tagged with this. So it talks about a lesson plan and how to approach George Washington Carver, according to these people. So they have what they call the contributions approach, which is level 1, which means there's levels to this shit, right? So activate prior experience. What do you already know about George Washington Carver? Read the biography and explore the resource links for additional information. Share what you've learned with the class. They give you a link to go to. Read and engage in a group discussion of the challenges Carver faced in his research pursuits, both as an African-American scientist from the South and a closeted gay man in a relationship he had difficulty hiding. Extended knowledge. Read. How and why did Carver develop crop rotation? Now, this comes after number 2, which is getting into his sexuality and saying that he was a closeted gay. But I kept going. I kept reading. They have what they call level 2, which is the additive approach. Read and describe Carver's relationship with Austin W. Curtis. Remember that name, Dr. Austin W. Curtis. Website investigation. Conduct an advanced search at legacyproject.org. Explore advance for other LGBTQ scientists. Compare that person's contribution in life to Carver's. How are they similar? How are they different? Level 3, the transformational approach. Read, how does one make sense of the role of Carver's castration at the hands of his adopted white parents? Like I said, there's no direct proof of that. There is proof that he's castrated. I'm very comfortable with that fact as being a fact. But who castrated him is still a mystery because it's not documented who castrated him. People do say that his adopted parents, the Carvers, did, but like I said, letters show that he had a sense of admiration and affection for him that I don't understand or know that someone would have, unless they castrated him when he was young before he could remember, because they did get him back as an infant. So that could possibly have happened as well. So then it says, review an essay from the GLBTQ archive. In his teaching career, Carver formed deep relationships with male students. How did this come to the attention of the Tuskegee University? Read some Booker T. Washington letters. Nowhere in it does it talk about anything appropriate going on with George Washington Carver and male students. Level 4, social action approach. Carver made groundbreaking contributions that changed society. He is rightly lionized by African Americans and many others because of his achievements, but his sexual orientation has routinely been overlooked. Why is this? Why is that important? I'm gonna stop there because level 4, that was it, the social action approach. So this is a greatly detailed outline of how to basically teach this information. Oh no, I do have to finish reading this. Number 1, after the why was this orientation routinely overlooked? So they even give you the reasons when kids start asking questions, they give you the rebuttals to the questions. So the era in which Carver lived made any speculation about his sexual orientation extremely dangerous. Read the essay, Dead Ends and Discoveries. Do you accept the author's conclusion? Why not? I didn't bother to read it because by now I'm totally not sold on anything that they're freaking talking about in here. So then, number 2, what steps can be taken to ensure future historians at least consider a person's likely sexual orientation, even if there is no recorded declaration of it, which is the case with George Washington Carver. There is no documented declaration of George Washington Carver saying that he was anything other than a scientist and a Christian. You listen to some of the things, and one thing else I noticed as well, I'm not going to just stop at one source. I'm gonna dig and find a couple of sources because I want to make sure that I'm not going off on a limb and look like a fool and be totally wrong. I don't know whether George Washington Carver was gay or not. My thing is, why is it important? Why is it important, fam? Does anybody have any answers out there? There's 9 people on here, 10 people on here. Does anybody out there have any answers as to why is that important? It's important for a reason. It's just like that tooth decay, man. It starts out small, but it's something very, very, very different about what they're trying to do to our brother George Washington Carver. First of all, he's not here to defend himself. I'm going to read another story to you. This was in NBC News. This was a while back. I guess 2016 was when this was written. It talks about a new book gives a rare glimpse of the dramatic life of George Washington Carver. Let's see. George Washington Carver. Peanuts wasn't it. Somewhere in Alabama, black man. Did he invent peanut butter? From an interracial, homoerotic love affair to constant fights with a deeply jealous Booker T. Washington, Carver's life was every bit as dramatic as his astonishing work. So they just bypassed the peanuts and all of the advancements in plastics and medications and everything else that he made to go to a homoerotic love affair. Now notice, it's a difference between homoeroticism and homosexuality. It's a big difference between that. Look, don't get me wrong. It's not about whether he was gay or not. It's not about what he liked. It's not about what was going on in his bedroom. This is about the story that they're trying to web together to pull another one of our heroes into their movement. And it's a reason that they're doing that. And honestly, it's a very smart reason because they keep their blood in their bodies. See, if you can latch on to people who'd already bled and struggled, and if you could twist history and twist the story, you don't have to bleed and struggle to get yours. It's just like a parasite. You attach to something and you feed off of that, and that's how you grow. It's happening right under our noses, and a lot of people don't understand it. Well, let's go on into this. This is by Christina Vella, by the way. And it's funny because my history teacher, his name was Mr. Vella. I wonder if it's any relation, because she did graduate from Tulane. She's passed on now. So it states, most people can remember a few of his inventions from some children's biography they read in school, which explained that he saved thousands of farmers from starvation with products he developed from peanuts, sweet potatoes, soybeans, and even such unlikely sources as swamp muck and oil sludge. After his death in 1943, Carver remained a household hero until the 1960s, but his fame faded as public focus shifted from saintly black gentleman to activist of an angrier genre. Yet dear old-fashioned Carver, working in a bare-bones laboratory, hardly worthy of a name, and living in a period of virulent racism that we today can hardly imagine, still has so much to teach us about science, race, and life. I'm going to be honest. George Washington Carver may have had a problem with just the average poor dude that he ran up on in the streets, and he probably barely ran up on those. But George Washington Carver talked to Secretary of Agriculture of the United States. This is before he went to Tuskegee. Two of them. One was Wallace and the other, I have it here. I'll find it for you. George Washington Carver was born a slave, raised by his kindly owner, Moses Carver. Now, notice how they like to put that little word in there, kindly. He was such a kindly owner. A kindly owner. A kindly owner. Think about that. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Check it out. In a one-room shack, Uncle Moses taught George how to play the violin, but being illiterate, he could not teach him to read. Thus, at the age of 10, George gathered his pet rocks and seedlings, and struck out on his own to seek an education. So you know that the castration probably happened before 10, because once he struck out on his own, he was picked up and raised by a childless black family who raised him like their own. Excuse me. He even worked at odd jobs, saving enough to support himself for a couple of months so that he could attend school, and returning to work when his money was gone. He was a black drifter in those bitter years. Once in Kansas, a lynch mob dragged a black man down the street where George was standing, bashed the man's brains out on the sidewalk, hanged what was left of him, and then set fire to the bloody remains. The memory haunted Carver for the remainder of his days. He managed to work his way through school and at Iowa State College at Ames. I heard a story about Iowa State College. I heard that's actually where he may have been castrated, because he had to live with some people that had daughters. That's, like I said, that hasn't been confirmed. Okay. He even earned a master's degree, and because he was so loved and admired as a genius scholar, found himself appointed to a full-fledged faculty position. By 1896, he met Booker T. Washington and fell under the hypnotic spell of a man who we will become to idolize. Of course, you saw at the beginning video, I put him looking at the statue of Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee University. And just if you look at it, you could tell to see the reverence and the respect that he had for Washington. We're going to keep on going. All right. He had to give up his post to Iowa to go to his people, the Negro school Washington had founded in Alabama, and where Carver remained the rest of his life. And so they didn't say the name of the school; it's just the Negro school. All right, that's Tuskegee University. In the sharecropper cabins he visited in Alabama, Carver saw disease and desperation such as he had never before witnessed. Generations of cotton farming had depleted soil, and cotton prices fell. Sharecroppers starved. Carver, working alone with makeshift utensils, set out to find crops, besides cotton and the one mule farmer could raise. Those alternative crops were peanuts, which replenished the soil, and sweet potatoes, which yielded more food per acre than any other plant. But in those days, the peanut was no more considered an agricultural staple than parsley. Now, the peanut is probably the staple crop in the wiregrass area of Alabama and many other places in the country. Peanuts have become the third most important cash crop in Alabama and Georgia because of his efforts. Is what it says. But hold on, I'm gonna get into it. I'm getting to it. Thank y'all for bearing with me. Carver's life in those years was cursed with drama. Booker T. Washington was gnawed by his jealousy of his I don't even know this word. Is it erudite professor? I ain't never heard that word. Erudite professor. And the two made each other wretched for 19 years as they worked together. Washington harassed Carver mercilessly and was largely responsible for the suicide of Carver's dearest friend, a married woman with whom he was in love with. After a fierce and complicated conflicts between Washington and Carver, the woman ended up throwing herself off of the highest building in Tuskegee. Only after Booker T. Washington's death could Carver begin garnering a reputation for his scientific work. In his research station, he created useful items from materials normally thrown away. Barnyard feathers, he created 500 products. Weeds that yielded dyes, over 500. Acorns. He's actually the one who taught farmers that they could feed pigs acorns instead of having to feed them expensive food. Animal bones, pine straw, kudzu, and many others. Farmers were accustomed to nailing newspaper on the inside walls of their shacks. Carver showed them how to make whitewash from the clay found on their farms. And along the way, he helped develop laundry powder, shoe polish, and dozens of paints and stains from the same clay. From wood shavings came synthetic marble. His discoveries in botany and mycology, rocks, the medicines he concocted from plants, his substitutes for milk, these could fill a book. Albert Einstein considered Carver one of the 10 greatest scientists of his time. But then here we go with this. There were love affairs too, including a 10-year obsession that all but shattered Carver. When he was 60 and known everywhere, he fell helplessly in love with a 23-year-old white evangelizer, Jim Hardrick. Then here, in parentheses, she puts, did we suppose that same-sex and interracial love were only modern developments? During the same period, one of Carver's close friends, with whom he was also in love with Jim, the tormented triangle ended when the heartbreaker Hardrick married a different woman. So do you see what they're trying to insinuate there? I'm going to do the research. So I started looking at letters that George Washington Carver wrote to Jim Hardrick because I want to understand this love and this obsession that a 60-year-old man would have for a 23-year-old boy, which is what that is considering the facts and the age difference, correct? Do you see what type of image they're trying to portray of this man? And they're doing this with zero proof. They have no pictures. They have no letters. They have nothing to prove this. But because he was unmarried and because he liked to give peanut oil massages to people, because he's the one who invented peanut oil, because he had a young assistant, Dr. Austin Wingate Curtis, and we're going to talk about him in one moment. All of a sudden, or he was jovial with the boys at school. Now all of a sudden, he's a homosexual male, and pretty sick. On top of that, he like young guys. That's what they're trying to. That's what they're trying to portray here. But let me find this letter because that would have been in 19. Uh-oh. Hold on. All right. I don't. Oh no. Sorry, y'all. All right. Let me find the Hardrick letter. you know, if I would have been prepared like I thought I was. I like to pride myself in being prepared. But if I was as prepared as I thought I was, I would already had this out here, right? So, not 1902. I'm going to be right at 1929. And I'm just going to read one. And he wrote letters to everybody. You know, that was just the way that people. So let's look. So she says that he had how did she say this? He fell helplessly in love with the 23-year-old white evangelizer, Jim Hardrick. So this letter was written on July 1st, 1932, to Mr. James T. Jimmy Hardrick. My beloved spiritual boy, Mr. Hardrick, I must tell you about an experience I had today, which shows so clearly that God moves in mysterious ways and his wonders to perform. But we left for Mississippi. While dear Howard was here for the first time, I made some collections of fungi, some distances away. Occasionally, my mind would urge me to go back there again. The urge became so strong this morning that I went. I found a place grown up with weeds and briars. I began pulling the dead limbs out, but the wasp had built the nest, and it soon ran me away without stinging me. I stood far off, quite perplexed. Started home, proceeded a little ways, and spied another pile of brush. I went to it, and I found it to be one of the richest finds that I've yet made. God closed the first door that I might see one open with greater opportunities. This is often so. We are sorely disappointed in some of our fondest dreams. You have seemed to be with me all day today. May God ever be with my great spiritual boy, my pioneer boy, my oldest boy. In fact, God's pioneer boy, with so much love and admiration. George Washington Carver. Helplessly in love. This is what I'm talking about, people. Look, y'all get the idea of what I'm talking about. I'm not going to continue just going down this path because it's really ridiculous, and they already let you know that there didn't even have to be any record of it. So I started doing more research on this young man that they said he was so in love with that he would walk hand in hand with, and that was Dr. Austin Curtis. Austin Wingate Curtis. So I started looking up information on Dr. Curtis, who died in 2003 in Detroit, by the way, and still owned George Washington Carver's papers, all of his research, because they did research together the last 7 years of George Washington Carver's life. Curtis was born in 1911 in Institute, West Virginia. He went to Cornell University, graduated with a degree in chemistry. He went to work at Tuskegee University in 1935 as George Washington Carver's assistant. He said, look, listen at these assumptions. They say that George Washington Carver will walk hand in hand with him, and that they actually said that they cohabitated together until George Washington Carver's death, and at which time George Washington Carver left him all of his goods. What most people don't know is what you have to read, and you'll read it. It pops out of the page at you. Is George Washington Carver did not really have many earthly goods. He wasn't a wealthy man. He had all the fame in the world, but he had very little wealth. And what he did leave to Dr. Austin was Dr. Curtis was research. A lot of the research that they did together. Henry Ford credits George Washington Carver and Dr. Austin Curtis, who actually died in Detroit as a very successful businessman. Okay? But let's just talk about how sick the mind is of some people, right? Because when you're studying history, one thing you can't do when you study history, you can't study something that happened 100 years ago and apply your mind to it today. It's a certain amount of that mindset that you have to take on. You have to be period conscious when you start talking about things today that happen in history. You hear it all the time. You hear them cats, oh man, I couldn't have been no slave because they're going to kill me. They wouldn't have had no problem killing you. That's why I tell them. You know, at that point in time in history, it was a whole different way of thinking. That's why I hate that term. I'm not my ancestors. Sincerely, these hands, as if our ancestors were weak or somehow unequipped to handle what they were dealing with. I think you would find yourself unequipped to handle what our ancestors had to deal with. I'm gonna be honest. And you know, so I think a certain amount of respect, you got to put some respect on it when you start talking about ancestors and what people went through and start calling people stupid. I noticed the young people like to do that. They like to hurl, you know, insults. Even some of the older people, you know, you stupid. Our folks were stupid and blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't have been this and that. You wouldn't have did shit because you don't know shit now. I'm going to be honest. If you can sit there and say that now, you don't know shit now. So you wouldn't have did shit back then. And that's just the truth of the matter. But let's just talk about how sick these people are. So Dr. Austin Wingate Curtis was born in 1911. George Washington Carver was 47 years old in 1911. When Curtis came to Tuskegee to work with him, George Washington Carver was 71 years old. Still going to work every day. So perhaps walking hand in hand with somebody everywhere you went at 70 down one, is that really a sign that you gay? I'm just asking. I mean, you know, am I wrong here? Is that really a sign that you gay? Because you have to walk hand in hand with whoever, Cain, you know, whatever. Because you like to, because you spend a lot of time doing in-depth research with this guy. Damn right. Exactly. This is how sick people are, man. And if you let them try to get it over on you without asking the right questions and critically thinking, people will get this over on you. They've been getting this over on people. This has been working somewhere. Being that there are no records of anything that happened, I'm gonna make a move to strike this narrative from history, period. I think that's the best thing to do, is strike this whole narrative from history. And it's somebody so unsuspecting that you would never guess. You know what I mean? You can't even hardly find anything about Dr. Austin Wingate Curtis. I can't even find a Wikipedia. I couldn't find anything on him. Very, very few things. I found some stuff in West Virginia on who he was. But, you know, these people were very discreet with their lives. But for George Washington Carver to be so concerned and preoccupied with everything in the natural, why would he go for something as unnatural as being considered a pedophile? Is that what you're trying to say? Because, you know, these are all young people that he's going after. And then to be going after people when you've been castrated is even stranger. He had a very high-pitched voice, an unusually high-pitched voice. And I think that had a lot to do with how he was perceived in today's times. But things I've read from secretaries and different people that worked at Tuskegee, they were pretty solid. They said he was great with the kids. The kids loved him. He taught them. He taught them with enthusiasm and passion. And he's done some great things for agriculture as a whole. Agriculture as an industry. I will end this part by saying one thing. And this was from George Washington Carver in his own words. And this was about his alleged companion what they like to say. George Washington Carver, and I quote, "He seems more like a son than a person who has just come to work for me." These are things that are being ignored. They're ignoring the actual facts. They're ignoring what he said in order to push an agenda. And the real goal is to have you so afraid to say anything about it because you don't want to be pegged as homophobic or a hater that you're not going to stop it. You'll allow the lie to proliferate and continue because you're afraid of being a social pariah for speaking out against the norms. I got news for you. It's always been the norm. Being a homosexual is not new. It's as old as the earth itself. Whatever floats your boat, man. I don't have a heaven or a hell to put anybody in. This is by no means to judge anybody or to disparage anybody's lifestyle. But one thing you're not going to be is a liar. You're not going to lie. You're not going to try to pull the wool over my eyes to promote this false narrative. Because if you look deep on TV, look on the internet, they're putting this whole thing in our lap, black people. Black man, you're becoming the face of homosexuality. It's never done really fast. It's all done real subtly. And silence is complicit. If you ain't got nothing to say against it, then you down with it. I appreciate y'all for checking out the show tonight. Oh, I forgot. Let's see one thing. I can't leave without summing this up. This was on WKRG today, and it's been on Facebook. I'm sure people heard about it. Some are wanting to change the term from breast milk to chest milk or human milk to be more inclusive to transgender and non-binary parents. This is going on. This is out of Chicago. Chicago, News Nation Now. This was written by Felicia Bolton at News Nation, and this was all put out here on Facebook by WKRG News 5. There is a new push by some healthcare professionals to change the term breast milk to chest milk. In the United Kingdom, one hospital made international headlines. Hold on, come on, thing. All right. International headlines for changing the term breast milk to human milk. It's an effort to be more inclusive to transgender and non-binary parents. Illinois mother Jill Aspinwall says she wanted to provide the best nutrients possible for her 3 children, but admits she struggled to breastfeed and was often shamed for doing so. I've had dirty looks. I've had comments, and I'm just letting it go, said Aspinwall. I'm feeding my baby and providing the best nutrition possible. Some people are intolerant of breastfeeding in public, especially not covering up. But once the baby's a few months old, they bat off that blanket and they want to see what's going on. After the first experience with nursing her daughter, she decided to help others. She became an intentionally board-certified lactation consultant in 2015. Then she opened her own lactation service after hours breastfeeding support. She now teaches parents how to naturally feed their child. Recently, Aspinwall implemented terminology changes at her practice. I think we could speak to people in general terms until we get to know that client individually, and then we can know what pronouns they like to use and to be addressed as when we can address them as such, said Aspinwall. What's a pronoun? She says she started to use terms chest milk or human milk instead of traditional terms. She says it's a way to create a more comfortable atmosphere for transgender parents is who are not going to freaking breastfeed their kids. God damn, man. Sorry, this is the worst. This is the worst, man. I'm sorry, man. This is the worst. So this isn't about reality. This is about validation. Have you ever been around somebody who always constantly has to be validated? Isn't that shit annoying? Doesn't it suck all the energy out of the room? Somebody who just has to basically suck all the emotion out of the room from everybody else in order to get theirs. Like I said, this is by no means to disparage anybody's sexuality, but shit, man. Are women really going to be able to have anything at the end of the day? They already can't run track. And I don't want to go too far. This is about validation. This isn't about anti-discrimination. This isn't about people are just running rampantly killing homosexual or gay people. This is about cultural shifts. And in order to shift the culture, it has to be validated by the people that it's targeting. Watch your children, man. Watch what your kids learning in school, man. Ask plenty of questions. Like I say, my goal wasn't to offend anybody in this video. And I'll take a few phone calls. If anybody want to call in, man, go on, do it now. Let me go on, excuse me. Put the number up. Drop your opinion. What do you think, man? Should people in historical figures, is their sexual orientation really important to know about? Maybe even a better question. What if they were gay and did a whole bunch of evil shit? Do we want to talk about that? I mean, is that something we could talk about too? Is that off limits or on limits? What's up? Can we discuss the people who were like just total pieces of crap throughout history? Alexander the Great, people like that. Killers, murderers, genocidal maniacs. Can we talk about that? I appreciate y'all for checking out the show. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and share. And if you're not subscribed to the Big Mike Drop, subscribe to our channel. Like I said, I did not set out to offend anybody tonight, but I did set out to have this conversation. Because unlike a lot of people, I'm not afraid. Not afraid of getting canceled, not afraid of losing any social points, whatnot. Because those who know me, I know people who have alternative lifestyles. You know, they know I ain't got no problem with them. I got no problem with what they do. I don't make any comments about it. Darren, what's up, fam? Man, I'm cooling. Good to see you, bro. Happy birthday to you too, bro. Yesterday. Anyway, that's been this episode of the Big Mike Drop, man. Like I said, do your own research. It really doesn't matter what was going on with George Washington Carver. The only thing that matters is the lineage that he left and the image that he left. He portrayed what he wanted to portray. You feel me? So let's leave it at that, man. Hey, keep in mind too, they're trying to do the same thing with Martin Luther King. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. I thank you for checking out the show too, D. That's been this episode of the Big Mike Drop. It's Fire Your History Teacher, little Tuesday edition. We'll be back Thursday. I don't know who I'm gonna have on Thursday, man. I don't know if I'm gonna have anybody on, but we're gonna have some good content for y'all. I appreciate y'all for joining us this evening. Don't forget to check us out at www.thebigmicdrop.com. We got those I Love Black t-shirts in right now. It's not just a Black History Month thing. This thing is going on for the rest of the time. This is my shits. Let me show you. I'm gonna put my products up here. Boom. So we got your little coffee mug, your campfire mug. We got your t-shirts, and we got the Champion I Love Black hoodies. So go ahead and get that today, man. Please help support the Big Mike Drop. This is the only thing we're doing to make any money meet. So, you know, if you want to keep getting this good content, you know what I'm saying, hit us up, share, like, subscribe. Peace.